The tension in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room was already very strong when 27-year-old Karoline Leavitt walked up to the witness table. She used to work at the White House helping with communication, and now she helps the committee with their questions and investigations. The committee was holding what was supposed to be a normal meeting to check on how fair the Supreme Court is being. Justice Amy Coney Barrett had come on her own to answer questions about new rules the court had made about ethics, rules about what is right and wrong for judges to do. Justice Barrett, who was calm and spoke clearly as usual, had spent the first hour answering normal questions from the senators. She did it with the calmness and fairness she had shown during her 3 years as a Supreme Court judge. But then, the feeling in the room suddenly changed. Senator Thomas, the chairman, said, "Now the committee gives the floor to Miss Karoline Leavitt, special counsel to the committee, for 20 minutes of questions." Barrett's face stayed calm as Leavitt got her papers ready, but no one in the room, not even Barrett herself, expected what was coming next. Leavitt looked straight at Barrett and said, "Justice Barrett, thank you for coming today. I want to ask about a dinner that happened on February 8th this year at the Cosmos Club here in Washington. It was a private dinner with you, Justice Daniel, and some top people from a company called Sentinel Pharmaceuticals. This was only 3 weeks before the court listened to a big case, Sentinel versus the Department of Health and Human Services." The room went completely quiet. Barrett had been about to pick up her water glass, but her hand froze in the air. The senior senators looked at each other with worry. Leavitt kept going. "I have papers that say this dinner included talk about the Sentinel case," Leavitt said, "and that during this dinner, there was an agreement about whether you would step away from hearing the case. But you didn't step away, even though you agreed to." Barrett's calm face showed a small crack of surprise as Leavitt held up a folder. "Would you like to talk about this dinner and the deal that was made there before I show the evidence to the committee?" The room was still. Everyone looked at Justice Barrett, who now looked a little shaken. The question Leavitt had asked was heavy, like a storm about to break. No one, especially not Barrett, had expected someone to question her honesty so directly and with documents to prove it. Before we talk more about this surprising moment and what it means for fairness in the courts, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep looks into important things happening in American government and justice. Justice Amy Coney Barrett became a Supreme Court justice in October 2020 after a very intense and heated confirmation process. She used to be a law teacher at Notre Dame and a judge on a lower court. Conservatives liked her a lot for sticking to the original meaning of the law, and even some people who didn't agree with her praised her for being very smart. In her 3 years on the court, she had worked hard to look fair, careful, and respectful of the rules. She often said the court should not act like politicians and should stay neutral. Karoline Leavitt was part of a new group of people in Washington who were serious about making sure leaders followed the rules. She had been one of the youngest people to help with communication at the White House and was known for preparing really well and not being afraid to ask tough questions. When she got her job as special helper to the committee, people at first thought she might be too young. But her deep knowledge of the rules and history quickly proved she was right for the job. The hearing was happening because more and more people were worried about the judges on the Supreme Court having secret ties to people and companies involved in the cases they ruled on. News reports had come out showing that some justices had money connections to businesses involved in court cases, but they hadn't told anyone. This made people ask for real rules about ethics instead of just trusting the justices to follow good behavior on their own. Justice Barrett had come to the hearing to show that she and the court were being open and fair. She wanted to show that the court could still be trusted. The case that Leavitt brought up, Sentinel versus HHS, was a big one. It was about whether the government could control how much drug companies charge for medicine under Medicare. Sentinel Pharmaceuticals didn't like those price rules and said they weren't fair. The Supreme Court decided 5-4 in Sentinel's favor. Barrett was the final and deciding vote. This meant big parts of the government's power to control medicine prices were taken away. Experts said this decision would help drug companies make $42 billion more over 10 years. What made Leavitt's claim so serious was that it was very specific and seemed to have real proof. Supreme Court justices are supposed to step away from cases if it looks like they might not be fair. Barrett had officially said she didn't talk to anyone involved in the case before the court heard it. If Leavitt was right, it wouldn't just be bad behavior, it could even break the law. For Barrett, this was very serious. She is the youngest justice on the court, with maybe many years left to serve. Her good name and honesty were very important for her future. And for the Supreme Court, which already had low public trust, another scandal like this could make things even worse. The room stayed quiet as Leavitt got her documents ready. The senators and people watching tried to understand how serious this was. Barrett, who had always stayed calm through hard questions and big court cases, now faced something even deeper. A question about whether she had broken the trust of her job. "Miss Leavitt," Justice Barrett began, her voice still calm but tighter than before, "I completely deny going to any meeting with people involved in a case that was still being decided. That would be a clear wrong move for a judge, and I have always stayed far away from anything like that." Leavitt nodded, like she expected Barrett to say that. "I understand, Justice Barrett. But I want to make sure you clearly hear what I'm saying." She pulled out a paper and showed it on the big screen in the hearing room. "This is the guest sign-in sheet from the Cosmos Club for February 8th, she said. "Your name is on it, along with Justice Daniels, and the names of 3 top people from Sentinel Pharmaceuticals." The room buzzed quietly as everyone saw the document. Barrett leaned forward to look more closely, clearly worried. "Guest lists can be tricky," Barrett said. She tried to sound calm, but her voice showed some tension. "I have gone to events at the Cosmos Club for judges, but I've never joined private meetings with people whose cases we're deciding." Leavitt pulled out another document. "This is a receipt for a private dinner room that night," she said. "It was reserved using Justice Daniels' membership, but it was paid for with a credit card from Jason Kroll, who is Sentinel's top lawyer." She showed that document too, side by side with the sign-in sheet. The time lines up with the guest list. Senator Elaine spoke up. "Miss Leavitt, these documents show that they were there, but not what was talked about." "Are you saying I might have more?" Leavitt answered, pulling out a third paper. "This is an email sent by Mr. Kroll to Sentinel's CEO the next morning. It says, and I quote, 'Dinner is productive beyond expectations.'" Barrett was unsure about stepping away from the case at first, but changed her mind after we talked about foundation opportunities. Daniel confident full support secured for favorable interpretation. The room was full of people. They were all shocked. Everyone started talking at the same time. It sounded like a bunch of bees buzzing. The man in charge, Chairman Thomas, tried to calm everyone down. "Order, please. Order," he said again and again. At the same time, Justice Barrett was whispering quickly to her lawyer. She looked worried. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded angry. "Miss Leavitt," she said, "I don't know where you got these papers or why they talk about me. But I can tell you, they are not true. I have always followed the law and done the right thing when deciding whether to step away from a case." But Miss Leavitt, the young woman asking the questions, wasn't scared. She stayed calm and looked right at Justice Barrett. "Justice Barrett," she said, "the documents talk about the foundation opportunities. They are linked to this new paper." Then she showed a 4th item. It was a letter from the Sentinel Foundation. The letter said they wanted to give $25 million to Notre Dame Law School to start a new center for teaching rules and fairness, called the Ethics and Jurisprudence Center. That's the same law school where Justice Barrett used to work before joining the Supreme Court. "This letter is from February 10th, Leavitt said. "That's 2 days after the dinner you attended, and just a few weeks before the Supreme Court was going to talk about a case involving Sentinel." The room got even quieter. The meaning of all this was becoming clear to everyone. A few senators were scribbling notes. Others were whispering to their helpers, looking very serious. Barrett tried to stay calm, but her voice showed she was struggling. "This is all just guesses and it's misleading," she said. "I didn't know anything about money going to Notre Dame. And I never talked about stepping away from the case or how the court might decide." Miss Leavitt waited. She let the quiet moment last a little longer. Then she spoke again. "Justice Barrett," she asked, "do you remember Gavin Pierce? He was your law clerk when you first joined the court." Barrett nodded carefully. "Yes, I do," she said. "He was a great clerk. Very smart." "Are you aware," Leavitt continued, "that Mr. Pierce now works for Sentinel Pharmaceuticals as a very important lawyer? He started in December and earns $1.8 million. Justice Barrett looked more unsure. "I knew he left for private work," she said, "but I didn't know exactly what job or how much he was paid." Then Miss Leavitt nodded to her staff. They handed out sealed envelopes to everyone on the committee. "Mr. Chairman," she said, "everyone now has a sworn statement from Mr. Pierce. He has been allowed by the Department of Justice to speak honestly and safely. In these papers, he says that he arranged the February 8th meeting because you, Justice Barrett, asked him to. He also says he was there when people made promises. You would not step away from the Sentinel case, and in return, they would give the $25 million to Notre Dame." The room went completely silent. No one moved. Senators opened their envelopes and started reading fast. Justice Barrett turned very pale. She no longer looked strong or sure of herself. Now, she looked nervous and afraid. Chairman Thomas looked very serious. He turned to Justice Barrett. "In light of this information," he said, "we are going to take a short break. Justice Barrett, I strongly suggest you talk to your lawyer." He called for a recess. But no one stood up right away. Everyone was frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. What had started as a simple check-in with the court had now become one of the biggest scandals in U.S. history involving a Supreme Court judge. About 30 minutes later, the hearing started again. But the feeling in the room had totally changed. News about the shocking information had already spread across Washington. Now, TV cameras from big news stations were live in the room. More senators had shown up. They squeezed into the already packed space. Justice Barrett had clearly spent the break talking to her lawyers. She didn't look confident anymore. She looked very serious. Chairman Thomas began the new session in a slow, serious voice. "Before we continue," he said, "Justice Barrett has told us she wants to speak about the evidence Miss Leavitt shared." All eyes turned to Justice Barrett. She leaned into her microphone and began speaking. "Mr. Chairman, members of the committee," she said slowly, "after looking at the documents and talking to my legal team, I want to explain what really happened." The room went silent again. "The meeting at the Cosmos Club did happen," she said. "But it has been described the wrong way. I went because another justice invited me. I thought it was going to be a talk with teachers and lawyers about court ideas, especially about patent law. But when I saw people from Sentinel Pharmaceuticals were there, I got worried. I knew they had a case at the court. I told them I was uncomfortable. I didn't stay long. I didn't talk about the case or my decisions. I should have left right away. And I should have written this down in my court forms. Those were serious mistakes. I take full responsibility." But Miss Leavitt wasn't finished. She stood and asked another question. "Justice Barrett," she said, "what about the email from Mr. Kroll? He talked about your decision not to step away from the case and about the Notre Dame gift. That email came right after the meeting." "I don't know why Mr. Kroll wrote that," Barrett replied, clearly nervous now. "Maybe he misunderstood. Maybe he thought I agreed when I was really just being polite. As for the Notre Dame money, I didn't know about it until today." Leavitt pulled out another document. "This is a text message," she said, "from your personal phone to Dean Harold Beckett at Notre Dame. It's from February 11th. You wrote, 'Harold, good news coming funding for Ethics Center. We'll connect you with principals after current court business concludes. Discretion essential for now.'" Gasps filled the room. Some senators couldn't believe what they just heard. Justice Barrett looked shocked. She quickly whispered to her lawyer. Then she spoke again, but this time her voice didn't sound strong. It sounded small. "I need to correct what I said before," she admitted. "I did know that there might be some money coming, but I didn't know exactly who it was from or that it had anything to do with a court case." Miss Leavitt didn't stop. "Justice Barrett," she said, "Mr. Pierce says that you told him not to send any messages that could link you to the money. He says you approved a plan where your decision about stepping away would help get the money for Notre Dame. Do you say that Mr. Pierce is lying in his sworn statement?" Barrett's lawyer leaned in and whispered again. After a long pause, Justice Barrett spoke, her voice now quiet and sad. "Mr. Chairman," she said, "because of how serious this is, I would like to pause the hearing so we can carefully look at all the emails and messages and speak to the right people." Senator Whitehouse leaned forward. He was known for being very focused on court fairness. "Justice Barrett," he said, "just to be clear, are you now saying that some of what you told us before might not have been right?" There was a tense silence. Then Justice Barrett said, "Yes, Senator. My memory and what I said earlier might not have been completely correct. I take all this very seriously, and I want to be sure everything I say now is honest and has all the facts." Chairman Thomas stood and looked at everyone in the room. "Because of how big and serious this is," he said, "we will stop the hearing until tomorrow morning so we all have time to think, check the facts, and prepare." As everyone began to leave, it was clear that this day had changed everything. Miss Leavitt had done something huge. By asking smart questions and showing careful documents, she had done what many people never could. She had shown that even the highest judge in the land might have made serious mistakes. The company's stock dropped a lot, 27% in just 2 days, because people who invest money got very worried. They were thinking about how much trouble the company could be in. The company's leaders told CEO Jonathan Keene and the main lawyer, Jason Kroll, to stop working right away while the company looked into what happened. In the company's message, they didn't say Leavitt was wrong, which made people even more curious. The Department of Justice, which checks if laws are broken, said it was starting to look into the situation. They wanted to see if it made sense to open a big, serious case. Some law experts said that even though Supreme Court judges are usually protected from getting in trouble the normal way, if they break certain rules about money or fairness, the law can still look into it. For the Supreme Court, which already had many people not trusting it, this problem could be very serious. Some law teachers and history experts were arguing about whether people could still trust the court. They said the way the court watches itself wasn't working anymore. Congress, the people who make rules for the country, started having meetings to talk about how the Supreme Court should behave. They didn't just talk about what Barrett did, but also bigger questions like, who makes sure judges are doing the right thing? Karoline Leavitt became very well known because she carefully found out what Justice Barrett had done. She spoke to Congress and explained how she found the truth. This was never about being mean to one judge or helping one political team, Leavitt said. Many people thought her talk was very smart and respectful. She said, "I got an anonymous tip that someone might have broken ethics rules, and I followed the clues step by step. That's what we should always do, no matter who the person is." Not long after, big changes started happening. A new law called the Judicial Ethics Enforcement Act was passed. Surprisingly, both sides of Congress agreed on it. The law said that Supreme Court justices must now follow clear rules about being fair, showing where their money comes from, and stepping away from cases where they might not be fair. It also said they couldn't do things outside their job that might make people question their fairness. As for Justice Barrett, People weren't sure what would happen in the long run. Some people said she should quit or be removed. Others said she had admitted she made mistakes and helped with the investigation, which showed honesty. A group called the Judicial Conference kept looking into the matter and might give her a punishment, but it didn't seem like she would be removed. Maybe the biggest change was how people now looked at the Supreme Court. Before, Americans were told to think of the court as always fair and above politics. Now, people could see it had problems like other parts of the government. New surveys showed more people wanted big changes, like giving justices shorter terms and making the choosing process more open. Later, history teachers and law experts said the Barrett-Leavitt hearings were a turning point. That was the time people started to think the court needed to follow strong rules too, just like everyone else. What started as a small check turned into something very important. It made people think about how power and fairness should work at the top of our government. For Karoline Leavitt, the effect on her life and job was huge. She was praised for asking careful, smart questions and for looking at facts instead of attacking people. She showed that Congress could do its job well. In her only big interview after all of this, she said, "Holding people accountable isn't about politics. If we ask our leaders to follow the best rules, it makes our country better, not worse." That's what I hope people remember from this hard time. If you liked this story, tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fun adventures and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.